have dinner tonight? Don't worry about your diet. I'm a starving student, and I can't afford anybody who can eat.
But we don't even know each other.
I'm Tom Sullivan. And you're Chanel number 5. Do we need to know anything else?
The story of blind singer Tom Sullivan encountering one of many beautiful women in If You Could See What I Hear, a new drama and one of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle for me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
This is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune, and I notice that you are still wearing that beautiful cast on your face.
Yes, very observant. One more week and it should be off.
Just a good reporter. I only counted one shoe, okay? In addition to If You Could See What I Hear, we'll also be reviewing Gaijin, about the first Japanese immigrants to Brazil, and Swamp Thing, about a scientist who turns into a spinach souffle. But first, Gene begins with Charles Bronson's Death Wish 2.
Well, the first Death Wish, made in 1974, found a wildly enthusiastic audience thrilling to its theme of revenge, as Charles Bronson played a mild-mannered New York architect who turned into a one-man hit squad after his wife was murdered and his daughter raped by a bunch of stoned thugs. In that first film, Bronson was captured by New York police but let go in secret because he was so popular with the citizens and because his one-man vigilante action had indeed reduced street crime. In the new film, Death Wish 2, Bronson is moved to Los Angeles with his daughter, but as the film opens, you might suspect, his house is again attacked by thugs, his maid is brutally raped and killed, and his daughter kills herself after she is raped. This is the first reel. And so you might expect Bronson turns into a vigilante again, and he begins hanging out in scuzzy places looking for the creeps who attacked his family. He makes a couple of kills, and word about his attacks travel from the L.A. police to the New York police.
Well, what about this report?
I know. The Los Angeles police has asked for advice on their vigilante situation. But there's something else you should know, sir. Paul Kersey now lives in Los Angeles.
But that doesn't mean that he's the Los Angeles vigilante.
No, sir.
What if he is?
Yes, sir.
If he is, and if he's caught, the trail leads straight back to us. We had him and we didn't prosecute.
For damn good reason. Street crime was down 50%. Muggers were afraid to go out on the streets.
If he's caught now, he'll tell the world we let him go. I'd be disbarred to the end of your career, Mr. Commissioner, and you, Inspector, would not collect your pension.
And I retired this year.
Well, it's quite simple. We have to get him before they get him.
We? You.
One of the dullest conversations in the history of action pictures. But don't worry, violence fans, there's more than talk to this movie. There's plenty of gunplay as Bronson begins his stakeouts. He has the uncanny ability to walk by a garage and, what do you know, a suburban couple is being attacked.
Don't Mary.
And one man gets away. That's good because this is still early in the movie and there's much more killing to be done. Death Wish 2 does develop a certain power because most of us, if not all of us, are frustrated by the slow movement of our criminal justice system, and there is a certain sympathy for the man who wants justice now. But as a movie, Death Wish 2 is far from thrilling. We know, of course, the direction it's going to take, which is revenge, the movie's only theme, a theme that is delivered with all the monotony of a repeating rifle. I wish that this film had at least tried to go off in some new direction at the end, but no, it's just revenge, revenge, revenge.
I don't even think it has an ending. It just stops. It leaves all kinds of things up in the air, and it doesn't resolve anything. It doesn't make a statement. I think the giveaway is that this is a sequel to a movie that was originally made in 1974, and that doesn't show that there's a tremendous demand for the sequel when they waited 8 years to make it. I think it's more of a case of the people behind this film being totally bankrupt for any new ideas. They go back to Charles Bronson's last real big hit and they say, well, let's try to recycle it.
Yeah, well, I think that there is still frustration in the land, and the audience that I saw it with was responding to the film at that level. But then, as the killings continued and there was no new wrinkle, your reaction, you could see how you're being manipulated, and I thought that that's where the film broke down. The other thing is the same strategy that was in the earlier film, which is that the guy doing the killing is white, and most of the guy doing the crimes are Latinos or blacks, and that they do all the cruel actions, and so you have this subtext of white man's revenge, and that's operating.
Something else that was shocking to me was how inept the movie was, just in terms of interesting dialogue, in terms of camera setups and so forth. It really seems awkward. People just seem to be standing around.
It's a slapdash sequel, and we see them all the time.
You got it. Now for something completely different, so to speak. The new Brazilian film Gaijin tells the story of the first 800 Japanese workers who immigrated to Brazil back in 1908, about how they were promised good jobs and the prospect of returning to Japan with a nest egg, but they found instead that they were indentured laborers, just a step above slavery. The movie begins in Japan with a marriage being arranged between a young man and woman because the Brazilian immigration authorities prefer that the immigrants be family groups. Then it follows that woman through several decades as she survives the hardships of the early years and eventually becomes a matriarch among the million or so Japanese that are in Brazil today. Here's a scene from early in the movie as the disillusioned laborers try to adjust to their new land.
そういえば、コーヒー園のずーっと下の方に竹やぶらしいものが見えるんだけど、今頃きっとタケノコが生えてるんじゃないかしら。今度の日曜日に取りに行ってみましょうか。
タケノコ。たまらんな。よだれが出てきた。
おかえり。
あ、おかえりなさい。ちょっと待っててね、すぐご飯の用意するから。
お前も一緒に食って。
私は後で。
こんなに土地があるのにコーヒーしか植えないのかな。野菜も植えればいいんだ。土地はいくらでもあるじゃないか。
ブラジル人は野菜を食べないのかしら。
知らないのかもしれんな。
そうだ。野菜のうまいことを教えることができたら、野菜作りで金儲けができるかもしれんぞ。新しい金儲けの道が開けるぞ。
野菜を作ろう。なんとか種や苗を探し出して休みを利用して植えるんだ。
仕事、仕事、仕事、仕事、仕事、仕事。
なんだ。
そんなに働いて何が楽しいんだ。
ろくに仕事もしないで外人の小娘にのぼせやがって。
彼も変わったな。
The word Gaijin is apparently a Japanese word for outsider, and the irony is that the Japanese now find that it applies to themselves. They're the outsiders in Brazil. They work for starvation wages, they plow all their money back into the company store, and they suffer under the heavy hand of a cruel foreman. Other immigrants are in the same boat in Brazil, including some recently arrived Italians who also got sold a bill of goods. Many of the workers die. Others survive and eventually walk away from that plantation and toward a new life in the cities. And Gaijin tells their story in simple, direct terms. It's not a great movie, but it's an honorable and absorbing movie. And another reminder that a new Brazilian cinema has been emerging in the last few years. This movie comes after Peixoto and Bye Bye Brazil, two real good films, and it's a good one too. Not that good.
Yeah, I think so. As I saw this, there was a certain sadness that developed in me just watching the film, out of the plight of the people I'm seeing. But also, I just couldn't help but think that this film could have been made in practically every country in the world.
Do you know the American film it reminded me of? The Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about a universal story here, and how do things get built in countries? How do countries develop? One of the things I think that's so lacking in the movies is the educational function of them. And this film almost works like a documentary. It could be played as that. I'm sure that some of the desire to make it in all the Brazilian movies is discovering the nature of the country. And that's clearly what this film is looking at. How did the coffee beans get picked.
I think it's. I was thinking of the fact that, for example, my ancestors came to this country to probably do jobs, something like the jobs the Japanese were doing in Brazil. Now, I'm a movie critic. This movie was made by a woman whose grandmother came over from Japan in 1908, and her grandmother is still alive and was the technical advisor on the film. So it's interesting
how... She's a filmmaker. Right?
Yes, she's the film. So it's interesting that Brazil, like America, was a land of opportunity eventually for some people.
Okay. Our next film, like Death Wish 2, really has only one dramatic beat to it. It's If You Could See What I Hear, based on the life of blind singer Tom Sullivan, who refused to let the fact that he is blind since birth get him down. And thus we are presented with an incredibly chipper blind person. And when I say chipper, I mean this guy is so high on life that, well, he's a bit of a bore to be around. For example, how would you like to be the bartender in this bar who has to serve Tom and his glib friend a beer?
This is the tragedy. I can't speak. My father at 14 did not... Just give me $4 for the beer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
No, I think maybe I was too eager. Maybe after all those years... No, it's $6. Hey, $6 for the beer, okay? Look, is that all you can say? Like, here we have a man. He's a poor, tragic, he's a shell of a man. He's making a psychological breakthrough. Hey, listen, Garrett. Telling me about his... Listen, I got lots of customers here to serve, okay? Just give me my $6. All right.
Let no man say Will Sly is not a generous person. Tommy, give the man $6.50.
Hey, pal, just give me my $6, okay? Can I speak to you for... You there? I'm broke. That's it, pal. It's an early night for you. You're on your way home. Wait. Ow. Wait a second. Will? I think we're going to have to give the man back his beer. This was supposed to be a short one anyway.
Maybe difficult, but not that much.
No, it's going to be very easy. Do you have a pitcher? Oh, you smart-ass bookworm. You're going up...
No, don't hit him. He's blind.
Here we go.
Take the beer.
Let go. Outside, let's go. I got one of the bastards.
You know, I hated it in movies when the service people in the movies... Remember we did that one, A Little Sex, where that woman was in the furniture store, and the people of the movie make a joke about this...
about the waiter or something, like the waiter in Victor Victoria.
What is it? What is this guy supposed to do? He's serving them beers. I don't get it. But, you know, it's because you're not the hero that you can get dumped on in the movie. Anyway, Tom is similarly aggressive. I'm getting a little aggressive here. When he's with women. Here's the way he hits on a nice, conservative young woman.
You know what the dean of psychology said to me? I asked him what I was going to do after I graduated. He said, get your master's. So I said, what do I do after that? He said, get your doctorate. And I said, well, what do I do after that? He said, oh, well, then you'll get a job with the other handicapped people.
Don't con me, Tom.
I'm serious, Patty. After all these years of fighting, I'd be right back where I started. Painting chairs and weaving baskets.
Look, don't do this to me.
Do what?
Don't give me your poor little blind boy bit. What do you want? Do you want pity? Is that it?
You're right. What can I say? You're absolutely right. Any port in a storm.
Anyway, I don't even think you should be in psychology. You should be a musician. That's what you like. That's where your talent lies.
Music? Do you know how tough the music business is? What
bitch.
Sullivan, I can assure you I have all the right parts and that they're all in the right places.
All the right parts. And in all the right places.
Tell me, do you practice being smug or is it a gift? I like you, Tommy. Don't try so hard.
Boy, that is the point. Don't try so hard. This guy really gets on your nerves. Yeah. All but the last few minutes of the film contain Tom's frenetic behavior until we finally see him try to save a little girl who is drowning at the bottom of a swimming pool. I really hate movies that place children in jeopardy. That seems to be stooping as low as you can get. When I see a kid in jeopardy in a movie, then the people are telling me they're out of ideas, and so to jack up the audience, they're going to give us a little girl in peril.
Next best thing to torturing a helpless dog or something.
Yeah.
You know, what bothers me about this film is that at the end it does try to get serious and give us this great shattering insight about Tom Sullivan. Now, I don't know Tom Sullivan. I've never met him. I don't know anything about him.
That's Mark Singer.
Mark Singer, who plays him in this movie, is... A little of him goes a real long way. And you get the feeling that he thinks of himself as a happy-go-lucky, carefree guy about town, lots of fun for everyone. I think if I saw him coming, I'd say, look out, here comes Sullivan. This guy's idea of a good time is to get drunk and drive a sports car filled with all of his friends while he's blind, you know.
Yes.
And it happens once, we're supposed to laugh. I didn't laugh too much. It happens a second time, it's just pathetic.
Yeah.
All the practical jokes in this movie are... it seems to me they're the work of an arrested adolescent.
Well, we're also supposed to, I mean, this film obviously wants us to embrace this person, this character, and I find him offensive. Truly offensive. Okay.
That's it?
That's it. That's enough, isn't
fine.
it?
Let's
I don't want to see the movie.
From Tom Sullivan to Swamp Thing. I don't know about anybody else, but my personal prejudice is that no movie named Swamp Thing can be altogether bad. And in fact, Swamp Thing is pretty good. This is one green slime movie that has its moments. The movie tells the story of a brilliant scientist who develops a magic formula that even makes the floorboards in his laboratory start to sprout leaves. Well, some evil villains want to steal this formula, so there's a struggle where the scientist gets splashed with the formula, he catches on fire, jumps into the water, and emerges a few days later as Swamp Thing. Well, how does Swamp Thing look? He looks like he survived an explosion in the spinach factory. In this scene, Adrienne Barbeau, who was Swamp Thing's girlfriend, tries to sneak the magic formula away from the bad guys.
You guys seen Ritter?
He's in the command shed.
Thanks. Ritter!
Charlie.
I'm holding. It's over, lady.
Well, that's sort of a routine action scene, but the best stuff in Swamp Thing is totally off the wall. That includes Swamp Thing himself. He doesn't talk in his early scenes, but eventually he develops into a moldy green philosopher. And then his arch enemy, the evil scientist, drinks the secret formula himself because he hopes it'll turn him into a handsome genius, but not so fast. The potion only makes you more like you already are, and so the villain becomes a horrible, hairy monster. And in this classic scene, Swamp Thing battles the monster to protect the unconscious Adrienne Barbeau.
behind me.
Wouldn't it be great, Gene, in life if you could just put your hand on something and it would glow green and make it well, you know,
Right.
like a bad film or a moldy box of popcorn or your bank book or anything like that?
Or our dogs of the week.
That'd be terrific. One of the inspirations of Swamp Thing is that it doesn't stay with any one genre too long. It begins as a mad scientist movie, then it turns into a monster movie, then it borrows from the great 1934 James Whale classic, Bride of Frankenstein. No shots where Swamp Thing befriends the helpless Adrienne Barbeau and then later sheds a tear while he's looking at a photograph in a locket. The movie turns at that point into a chains and subterranean dungeons type film. It gets really strange. The movie was directed by Wes Craven, the director of a movie named Last House on the Left, which is one of my guilty pleasures on a sneak previews not long ago. I was one of the few admirers of that film, and now my trust in Wes Craven is vindicated. Swamp Thing is a silly, goofy, weirdly inspired film, and it's a lot of fun.
You know, you saw this movie before me, and you told me that you thought it was pretty good. And I thought, now this is a case where you and we have had this running battle where you will find one element in a movie, I find sometimes, and then you say the movie is great, and I'm always complaining you're not being tough enough.
My great failing, right?
It's a great failing in life. Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. You're not wrong this time. This is terrific. I sat there and was enjoying not only what was on the screen because it's done so well in this comic book style, and it's based on a comic strip, but I was enjoying the fact that I was sitting there enjoying seeing a guy wearing a plant costume, seeing the glowing hand, seeing a guy turn into a midget. I loved the fact that I could do this. Now, maybe it's because, you know, we're adolescents at heart in some way because we do this job, but this is a lot of fun. As much as discovering a great movie like Diva last week, we talked about that, this too is part of being a movie critic, seeing a movie like this.
You know, one of the things I liked about it, it's very rare in a movie that the monster gets to talk. You know, even if a scientist turns into a monster, once he turns into the monster, that's it. You know, maybe a few grunts and groans and, you know, a few screams.
Sure.
This time, he does turn into this philosopher, you know, with his insights. There is great beauty in the swamp if you know where to look for it, you know.
There are a lot of comic book movies coming out now. Conan is a big one coming out this summer, and that's going to get a huge build-up. All I can say is that Swamp Thing, which just popped up out of the slime, so to speak, is a movie that's just as good, is exciting, and if you're a kid at heart or a kid really, I would see it.
Oh, here he is,
My
Gene.
goodness, Swamp
Sparky
Thing.
the Wonder Dog leaping into the balcony to remind us about the dogs of the week, the week's worst movie.
Right. My dog this week is an overwrought skin flick that has the gall to say in its ads, if you like Deep Throat and Singing in the Rain, you're going to love Blonde Ambition. Well, I love Singing in the Rain and so on Deep Throat, but I thought Blonde Ambition was a crashing bore, even though it tries to be some kind of sex extravaganza, with Blonde Ambition telling the story of two showgirls out in the Old West who get to be big hits on Broadway. The essential problem with all skin flicks is what to do between the sex scenes, and Blonde Ambition hasn't solved it, giving us one terrible old joke after another, which leads me to ask a couple of questions I've always wondered about with sex films. Why do people who make them believe that their audiences are stupid people, and they give us these stupid old vaudeville jokes? And if they believe that, aren't they showing their own contempt for the kind of film that they are making?
I think they didn't even think that people watching this movie would catch on that everyone in the Old West in this film has an Australian accent. Did you notice that?
Yeah, living in Newton-John and Company.
Speaking from down under. My dog this week is a relentlessly awful movie named The Grim Reaper, and it contains a scene so dumb I could hardly believe it. Before I talk about it, let me tell you about the rest of the movie. The Grim Reaper takes place on an island occupied by a bunch of tourists. There's an old mansion there inhabited by a loony pervert and his demented sister. The pervert, whose face is made up to look like an explosion at the silly putty factory, starts slashing everybody to pieces. Then there are endless scenes where the would-be victims creep around a deserted house with lots of lightning flashes all night long, and then comes the really dumb scene, where the heroes are at the foot of the stairs at this mansion, and the weird sister, she's way up on the second-floor landing, and she ties a rope around her neck and jumps off that landing, falls 2 floors, and hangs herself right in front of them, suspending her body in midair, right there. So the hero says, gives his knife to a buddy, and he says, "Quick, cut her down." And the buddy runs up the 2 flights of stairs to cut the rope because, of course, it's got to cut the rope at the top, you see, instead of at the bottom. Real brilliant.
I'm sure your mom is listening to this program thinking, and my son went to college to learn how to analyze this? Well, now, let's review the dogs. After reviewing the dogs, let's recap our reactions to the main movies on this show. Our first film was Death Wish 2. Neither Roger or I could recommend that Charles Bronson revenge thriller about a citizen who goes berserk and kills muggers. It had some power, but it was so predictable, so 2 no votes for that. We also agreed on Gaijin, the story of Japanese farm labor being exploited in Brazil. Both Roger and I found the film to be a poignant social documentary telling the story that has been repeated in many societies all over the world. And another agreement on If You Could See What I Hear, the story of blind singer Tom Sullivan, who we both think is oppressively cheerful. 2 no votes for that one. And we're together on all 4 films this week, I guess. 2 surprising yes votes for Swamp Thing, the monster picture about a woman scientist protected by a human weeping willow. We thought it was fresh, goofy, and surprisingly good.
Well, that's all for this week. Join us next time for a special sneak previews when Gene and I take a look at the changing Hollywood portrayal of homosexuality in the movies with scenes from Making Love, a contemporary love story, Personal Best starring Mariel Hemingway, and Partners with Ryan O'Neal. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for sneak previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.